Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm just going to go ahead and lead with the Soledad O'Brien type. And so, yes, I use Denise Bird for performance, and it's Denise Rivera because I'm married and I took my husband's last name. And I use she and her, the series. Alonso, I'm going to ask you the same, your name and your pronouns as well.
Okay, my name is Alonso Malik Pirio, and my pronouns are he, him.
Okay, great. So I wanted to start off by asking, this is an interview style, and I'm just going to ask Alonso some questions, and everybody has the privilege of hearing. I want to also thank Alyssa and everyone involved in putting this together because I am having the time of my life. The conversations are very engaging. I love listening to all the music. It's a really good symposium. Take advantage. So I am grateful for everyone for showing up here and grateful to be a part of this. And I can't wait to hear more from you too, Alonso. So, first of all, my first question is just in general, how are you?
Oh,
Because I know that, yeah, I know that we've been through something this year, everyone collectively. Of course, it affects some communities more than others. And so, I just wanted to ask, how are you doing? And are you okay? Are you, and
yeah,
how's it going?
I'm doing all right. I just got back from two pretty major events. One was a 2-week road trip I took to Minnesota, to Minneapolis, to visit some
Wow.
of my girlfriend's family and some of my family as well. And that was so needed after a year like last. We drove about 4,000 miles total and through like 10 different states and just seeing so much more and meeting so many more people than last year. I don't think made up for last year, but was
Right.
definitely a very necessary like healing experience. So
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I'm on the up. Yeah, I'm feeling good.
Yeah, that's awesome that we get a chance to kind of come together again. That sounds good.
Totally.
Okay, yes, and I'm got my cheat sheet of things so I don't get too off topic because I will probably do that just talking to you. But I did see that you went to UCLA, and I'm going to try and keep with the topic about gatekeeping and how to make ways out of no way.
Mhm.
There's a lot of conversation about institutions and how, right, how to do this within an institution setting and whether or not it's really conducive to finding our way, especially for people who have been in marginalized demographics, we'll say that. So I know that they can be great and not so great. And how was your experience at UCLA?
I think my experience at UCLA was pretty mixed. I think in terms of, I've been reflecting a lot also this past year on just my experience in college and stuff like that. And I feel like the very like structure of UCLA's School of Music inherently gatekeeps. So we've got the School of Music, right? The Herb Alpert School of Music, and underneath that there's other categories like the departments, right? So we've got the Department of Music, and then we've got the Department of Ethnomusicology,
Okay.
and then so music is just Western classical music. But I'm sure a lot of the people who are coming up with this weren't thinking of this question, but like, what does it mean to put something like this out there? Like this is music. This is the default, and everything else is other. It's like inherently kind of othering everything else and centering this and saying this is the best. This is what you go to a university to study. This is what an education in music is about. This is, you know, that kind of thing. So I was in the Department of Music studying music composition. If you want to be able to study music composition at UCLA, you have to be part of, you have to get a degree in Western classical music, basically, which was not something I wasn't aware of at the time that I joined. I think, especially growing up, I had gone to schools in a lot of kind of wealthier white areas of Los Angeles. So I'm kind of used to being the only Black person in very white spaces. So I think going into a program like that, I didn't really think anything of it at the time, just because that's what I was so accustomed to. But yeah, I think UCLA overall had a lot to offer me. I was fortunate enough to be able to kind of dabble in just like everything I wanted to. I joined a big band. I played in the UCLA Afro-Cuban Ensemble. I joined choirs. I played in pit orchestras and the wind ensemble. And I also did the composition program. And I think all of those had kind of their strengths and weaknesses. I think in terms of the composition department itself, there are a lot of skills that I don't think I would have gained otherwise from another program, um, such as like being able to prepare for orchestral sessions and readings and music engraving and a lot of stuff like that that's been very useful to me. I think in terms of where I wanted to fit myself in with music, I sort of felt there's a little bit of sort of an idea from the department and the faculty of where they were trying to direct us towards, what kind of field within music, basically to become more like them, because that's where their expertise lies. And I feel like there was sort of a sound people wanted us to go for, not as much as other schools, so I've heard, but yeah, I was that being said, I did feel very encouraged by a lot of professors. I did feel like I was able to develop my voice. But there are a lot of little things that kind of
I know, right? They
added
call it
up
like
to a bigger picture.
microaggression sort of things. I mean,
Mhm.
it's interesting. I like what that's interesting what you were saying there is ethnomusicology and music. I was just reading a conversation on like Twitter, for example, about mathematics that way too.
Oh
How
yeah.
somebody was like, well, math is not, it cannot be racialized. And everybody's like, au contraire, mon frère,
No.
because
Yeah.
let's talk about the traditions and things like that. So I definitely appreciate that. And you talked about, you said there are some individuals that were formative or helpful or encouraged you to find your own way. Do you want to give any shouts out or do you have any ideas of who and how?
Sure. Yeah. I think especially in my senior year. So we have one film composer on the composition staff. His name is Peter Golub. And I think because I also wanted to become a film composer, he sort of was the one who understood that I wasn't really trying to get into this as much so the kind of contemporary classical sphere in the way that the other professors sort of wanted me to. So I think he was really formative in just encouraging me to find my authentic style, be able to talk about it. Um, yeah, there wasn't anything, I never got any kind of microaggressions like, oh, make this a little less rhythmic, or oh, can you make this? There's a lot of like, can we make this a little bit more atonal stuff going on? Which, and I don't,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I was trying to do with that piece of music that they might have been referring to. Um, but yeah,
Right.
Peter Golub, he was definitely very formative, and it was great because I finished off my time at UCLA with him.
Oh,
He's
nice.
really good. Um,
Yeah, that thing that you said about rhythmic, I know I sent it to you in sort of a side email about I had the opportunity to, I mean, I had the opportunity to work for Libby Larson a little bit, and she was
mhm,
doing a composer competition, and so she had to go through just, I mean, so many reams of music and things like that when she puts together these competitions. And so I was
mhm,
working with an assistant who'd worked with her for a while, and it was very much that one of the pieces that came through was very rhythmic and very virtuosic. And he was like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean, no? No,
mhm.
what do you mean, no?
Immediately no.
Like,
Yeah.
that was amazing. So yeah. Okay, let me see. Oh, as far as composing, what makes an idea stick for you? Like, what are the ideas that get your time and attention? I'm curious on that, about the process of it.
Yeah. Well, so since we are talking about rhythm,
Yes.
I love rhythms and syncopations and that kind of stuff. There was There's an exercise I did with my second year composition teacher. His name was Mark Carlson. He was also a very amazing teacher. I was working on my flute sonata, and his kind of process is he starts his students up is just going through a bunch of different composition exercises and kind of going through different ways that you can come about ideas. And one of these ways that I really liked was writing, when you're writing a melody, writing the rhythm first. So don't come up with any pitches, just clap out something that you feel like is catchy. And I think that's really interesting because I feel like when I break it down to that kind of that element, um, I kind of realized that some of my favorite melodies and the things I like writing and the ways I can make it catchy, I feel like come from the rhythmic element and come from that pacing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's very
That
cool.
makes sense.
I love that. I would not, because as a, as a singer, and I'd imagine if I ever got into composition, it would be very much like word driven. But what about words? It's probably the rhythm with which you say
Yeah,
those things. Um,
but I have set text before, and that's
yes, I
also very fun for the same reason, is figuring out, well, what's the rhythm of like when I'm speaking this poem, what are the rhythms, what are the rhythmic relationships, that kind of thing, and how can I represent that musically? So I think that's kind of some of the
yeah.
fun for the process, is just making it sound more like speech.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to hear some of your songs toward the end of the program, I believe,
Wonderful.
right? Yeah, so that'll be great. Let's see. Okay, yes, to address the theme. What about when gatekeepers say no? And then some of us have had experiences with no that raise our eyebrows. So have you ever had an experience with a no that particularly raised your eyebrows in either in the profession, outside of school or anything like that?
I think, well, the first thing that comes to mind, so it's not necessarily an explicit no. It's more of kind of the attitude that our was held in our department, um, and what it seemed to reject and what it seemed to accept more. So I I have a friend who is a composer at UCLA, and what he really wanted to do was he really wanted to write like songs, like pop songs, songs to be featured in movies, that kind of stuff. For my first like 3 years, because he was in the same grade as me, for my first 3 years, seeing what he'd put on we had these quarterly composer concerts where we featured works by composers. A lot of his stuff was very atonal, very kind of like pointillistic, fun gestures. He would just do stuff like he described it to me. He's like, I wanted to make it kind of weird. But I talked to him, and that's not actually the kind of music that he liked writing. It was the kind of music that he felt like the professors wanted him to write. So, in a certain way, he was sort of like gatekeeping his own self as like a result of that. And I was like, dang.
Yeah. I was just talking about this in our breakout groups too,
Oh,
that you
yeah.
kind of like, yes, that your environment, like it's a survival thing, right?
Totally.
You want to assert yourself, but then it's also like if the environment is keeps pushing you a certain way, you feel
I know.
like,
Yeah, you
I
wanna
guess
fit in, you need
yeah,
to,
like the
yeah.
colonized mind, right? Like we talk about that
Oh,
a
the
lot in,
colonized mind, is that,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
So there was, so to keep going with that story, so there was one time where he actually decided, "I wanna feature one of these songs. I've been spending so much time doing this, let's feature it on one of the composers' concerts." So he had to like talk to a few professors. I don't think he really needed all this permission because it was a student run event, but he made sure to talk to a lot of people to make sure it was okay, you know. And they're like, yeah, let's, feature you. He was him on a piano as a vocalist with a microphone, which is not something we saw very
Yeah.
often, or microphones. And he made like a little speech at the beginning because he's like, well, you may be used to such and such and such music. this is the kind of stuff that I'm really passionate about, and this is what I really love to do. And then he proceeded to play this like amazing, beautiful song, and I was like, nice. I'm seeing some he's opening up the doors for more people to be able to express themselves in more kinds of ways and
Yeah,
sort of formats. So
that's so hard. I mean, that puts so much on, you know, it puts so much on the wrong person, right?
yeah,
Like, it shouldn't have been up to him to pave that way for it. Like, somebody should have given him the permissions way before to be
yeah.
himself. Like, and not that he even needed them, but he obviously felt like he did, asking
Mhm.
for them and stuff. And so is there anything more that we could do? Do you see opportunities within these institutions or within your experience where we can make a way out of no way? So it's tricky. When I think about this, I do think about like the National Association of Music Education, National
Mhm.
Association for Music Education. I think of Michael Butera, who was on the board and served for a while, and I don't know what kind of leader he was. Maybe he was amazing, but all I heard was that in 2015 or 16, he made the comments about the reason he didn't have Blacks or Hispanics on his administrative board is that we lacked the keyboard and theory skills to serve on that board, which, yeah, yeah,
Keyboard and theory
I
skills.
know. Well, and the
I'm
other
great at
thing,
those things.
I
What are you talking
know
about?
the things, those things that
Yeah.
I've watched you do so amazingly. Yeah. Yeah, so that basically was my big like, okay, we need to do something to change this. But I think about like the curriculum, then I think about when I was younger and how my introduction to music was, and a lot of it happened in private lessons and like what songs were taught in that
Yeah.
environment. And so that's kind of how Alyssa and I found each other too, through, I think, well, we went through the Institute of Composer Diversity, but also at that same goal of finding repertoire that reflected that we did not hear that much because of mindsets like that.
Hmm.
So anyway, I was just curious if have you thought in your own experience or in your own life, like what you do, and besides being you, to make ways out of no way.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting that you had just mentioned kind of the music you grew up playing and that kind of stuff. If we're going back to the whole colonized mindset sort of thing, my mother was born in Kenya during British colonization, and she went to boarding school, and her she would take music lessons there, and she felt kind of there's this difference between the music that she liked to listen to and the music that she was actually playing. So when it came time for, well, me to exist and her to put me in music lessons, she wanted to make sure that I had a teacher who was able to encourage different styles and stay not just encourage European composers to be on the forefront, but more so more people like that. Just a total variety. He played jazz, pop styles. Yeah, he was a very diverse kind of piano instructor, and I feel like that sort of thing empowered me to be able to create kind of these hybrid things and to be able to both fit myself in the classical world but also be able to do stuff outside of that. I think one thing I notice a lot in these institutions is this like reverence for like the great composers um, of the past. And while these composers do make a lot of very beautiful music, I feel like if we keep looking at the same group of people for inspiration, um, there's a lot we're missing out on. There's a lot. I feel like we got to get. I don't want to say like get rid of. It's kind of like a Mount Rushmore thing. Like these are the
Right.
founding fathers of our great.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. We
Yeah,
definitely do. We have like the Mount Rushmore in our music education books, and that is it.
yeah. So I think getting, I don't know, because some of these spaces are very white, and part of me has been thinking, like, do I need to value these institutions at all if they're not really built
With
for
me in mind.
diversity?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think part of it comes from the kind of institutions propping themselves up as being the ultimate way. This is how you need to do music. Here's how you need to think about music. You need to go through the conservatory and do all this stuff to be able to earn respect as a musician. And I feel like the less we kind of value that kind of thing, the less value it has.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
I
more of a mindset thing than an actual tangible um, solution. But
right.
that's my
We're
thinking.
going in deep, and I just met you.
Thanks. I've had so much time to think about this
Yeah.
somehow. um,
Yes, yeah. Yes, that's true. Okay,
yeah,
I think I have time for one more quick question
sure.
before we get into the ask the audience for some questions or some interaction. But
Wonderful.
do you have any dream projects, like dream collabs, any particular um,
Yeah,
ideas that you're just like, wow, I wish if I could get this person to do this on this would be amazing.
it's kind of funny you mentioned that because I just had the idea for the answer to this question like last night. I was listening to, are you familiar with the YouTube channel called Colors?
No. All right.
Okay, so they feature a lot of solo kind of independent artists from a lot of different genres and from a lot of different locations across the world. And kind of the whole aesthetic is that it's that person in front of like a blank color drop in the background, and it's very soothing to look at. It's very nice. But there was a musician from Mali that I had been listening to for the past couple of years. He's a pretty big. I feel like he's kind of superstar status in his kind of field, but he plays an instrument, a West African harp called the kora. And I was thinking recently, my freshman year, I had listened to, I think it was a concerto for Ravi Shankar. It was like sitar and orchestra. And I was thinking the kinds of stuff that this guy was playing on the kora, I was like, I could really imagine this because he's just playing by himself. He's able to accompany himself, play all these flourishing lines, these rhythms. He can just do it all. I was thinking like, wow, could be so powerful as something in that kind of format, like as a concerto.
Wow,
So that
fantastic.
was, yeah.
Thanks for
I don't know if
sharing.
that'll ever happen, but it's an
Yeah.
idea I just had.
Putting it out, manifesting.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yes. I have the floor open for questions. So I'm looking at the chat right now, seeing if anyone has any questions that they would like to. Otherwise, um, I definitely have some more I could keep asking here. I'll give someone a chance to write.
If you'd like to ask your question live, just pop your screen on. I'm going to go to gallery mode here, and at least on my end, so people can, pop in and ask a question. It's like a Quaker meeting.
If not, I'll ask more. Do you have any ongoing, like, do you have ongoing collaborations and oh, somebody asking a question? I'll
Hello.
Oh,
after.
Hi.
hello there. My name is Joseph. I'm one of the other composers
Awesome.
who's being featured at RMTP.
Yeah.
I was listening. I was kind of thinking about like your friend who was like kind of gatekeeping himself. Like it felt like you were like they were like where how you were talking about um like feeling like they were gatekeeping themselves,
Yeah.
like gatekeeping themselves in a lot of ways, like writing music that they thought the professors wanted. And I've found myself kind of doing that in I found myself doing that a lot with my college work at this point in time. And I've realized that really it doesn't need really listening to that kind of thing, listening to that kind of story and how they were able to move past it and continue and to start actually writing the music they wanted to write. That really felt very poignant to me because it helps me, understand that I can, write the music that I would want to write in this kind of environment. And I thank you for that. And I guess what I'm trying to ask right at the moment right now is what strategies do you have like to try and find your voice, like without like needing to figure out like being too influenced, I guess, by like what other people would want you to write, I guess.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad this story had such an impact. So the question was, how do you go about finding your voice? Yeah, I mean, the pressure from institutions can be a lot, depending on who you are, depending on who they are, how they interact with you. I think a lot of my musical influences and inspirations came from the music that I was listening to just on my own, kind of outside of what we were working on or studying within my own program. So we were studying, works by famous orchestral composers in my orchestration class, for example. But I was thinking, how do I take kind of this format, this instrumentation, and how do I take some of the things that kind of light my fire in the other music I'm listening to as well? So I think just listening to more stuff and figuring out what you like outside of this institutional context can really benefit you in terms of finding your own voice. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, to interject a little bit, I think a lot of what lit a fire under me too was learning more about like suppressed histories. Like there are aspects of your cultural upbringing and things like that that could be part of like some suppressed history, and to try and research that really teaches you so much about where your voice might actually be or where you fit. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I fit in that. That really makes a lot of sense to me. So I would challenge you maybe to read up on some things that you might not like. This book has been censored by your institution, like that kind of
Yeah,
information. Sometimes it's interesting to find those things too.
absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be like listening to music. It can just be through like what you're saying, kind of through stories. I mean, there could be a great opera or something else. It doesn't even have to be an opera, but based on some censored book or something like that. That's coming up with ideas in my own head right now from that.
Yeah, let's
So,
go.
yeah. Awesome.
All right, thank you so much. This
Thank
this
you.
was really helpful again, and I'm super excited for the concert later today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
More questions, type them in the chat. If not, you know what, just keep chatting and then maybe someone will pop in. If you have a question, just don't be shy. Just go ahead and put your face on screen or type one. We're going to let these two continue to prattle on for another couple of minutes, and hopefully you'll be inspired to join us. So take it away.
Yeah, so, oh, well, yes, I was going to ask you, Alonso, if you have any ongoing collaborations or anything that is happening now that you are particularly excited for.
Yeah, well, actually, so something I just wrapped up with. Um, this was not something I really did as a composer, but as a performer, um, I had just finished up music directing a show with this duo called the Kings of Soul and Swing. And these two people, one of them is the frontman for the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and the other guy is the current star of Hamilton.
Ah,
Yeah, and so they come together and they do this kind of old crooner style show where they charm the audience and tell a bunch of funny stories and make jokes and stuff like that. And yeah, I just flew out for that gig. I've been arranging for them for a while, and it was just really nice to be able to make music with people again. I
um,
think the social element of music is something I kind of took for granted, especially as a composer. I can just very easily just like sit in my room for like 3 days straight on Sibelius or with just like my sample libraries and just totally isolate. But when that's all I was doing, I kind of lost a lot of inspiration because I've realized a lot of it comes from the people I meet, the people I talk to, the stories I hear, and the places I visit. So um, yeah, being able to finally do those sort of things and play music with people has made me kind of be like, okay, I can do this again. Like,
right. Yeah, I
yeah,
got together with some musicians the other day. I'm like, oh my gosh, we talk so much. Like, do we just shut up at some point? So,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
the talking is valuable, though. I think
yes.
the better you know people, the more fun it is to play music with them, or to write music for them. Even I really love writing music for my friends. For example, I've got a piece for bass trombone for my friend Robbie. We've been friends since I was like 11 years old. And so being able to collaborate with him and kind of explain my musical ideas, I feel like there's such a shorthand since we already just know each other so well. So,
That is very cool. Yeah, I
yeah,
like those kinds of collaborations are
totally.
very neat. Oh, here was one that I had here. Oh, there any specific, well, you talked about colors a little bit. Are there any spaces that you're watching closely? Like, is there anything that you're kind of like, oh, what's going on over there? That looks like a cool project or a cool space.
Yeah, well, so as a film composer, and as a person of African descent, I get very excited over any stories that get a lot of money handed to them that have anything to do with Africa, because there are so few. So I've noticed that Disney is now kind of getting on that train now too. I think, I don't know if it was a TV series or if it's a movie, but there's something with this comic book company called Kugali Media, and it's like this Afrofuturist sort of universe thing through Disney, and I'm just kind of I'm waiting to see how they what they do with it and that sort of thing. I think yeah, just being able to create stuff in those kinds of like fantasy spaces, I think are very exciting. Um, yeah, one thing I'm also looking for or towards as a film composer is what are they calling it? The people who created Avatar: The Last Airbender, they're creating the TV series. They're creating a whole kind of like universe and media company, maybe
Oh,
called like, is it called Avatarverse or something like that? I don't know exactly what it is, but they're going to be making a lot more content within that universe. And I think something like that is totally my dream job, like writing music for that kind of thing.
yeah, I
'Cause-
saw one where you entered a competition where they had like a little scene from like an anime type show and you were to compose something that would
Yeah,
match it. I think I was like, wow, that is so cool to set those kind of parameters for a project and then hear what people come up with. And
yeah,
um,
absolutely. Yeah, and especially with the original Avatar: The Last Airbender series. I don't know if you've seen it or
yeah,
have you played
I've
it.
got a kid who's gonna he's
Oh,
big interested in it.
awesome.
Yes.
Yes, I was totally that kid. Yeah, Jeremy Leffman, the composer. I think there's another composer as well. I forgot his name, but there's just a lot of influence in the show in general from a lot of different cultures around the world, and musically especially. There are a lot of different kind of non-Western instruments brought in and that kind of stuff. And the way he's able to fuse those together and use those to create atmosphere or represent characters or drive the story. That was very exciting to me as a kid. And I would love to do something like that
I
in the
always watch those
future.
attempts too, like you were talking about Hamilton, and I got a chance to, I met Lin-Manuel and stuff like that in Puerto Rico,
Oh,
which was, yeah, it was awesome.
wow.
Yeah, so when he was talking about Hamilton in Puerto Rico, at first he had mentioned bringing in a cuatro, which is a Puerto
Oh,
Rican instrument, yes, and having something done with that. And then I watched that space because that didn't happen. So I'm like, well, what
oh,
happened there? You know, I get curious about like the where did that go awry sort of things too. But it,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Interesting. Bring in a cuatro and because I
Right.
was thinking about Lin-Manuel Miranda. Are you familiar with the In the Heights?
Yes.
Yeah, so I've done a couple performances of a couple school performances of that show, and
Oh,
they
cool.
do ask for a tres in the guitar part. So
Oh,
not a cuatro, but a tres.
still something. Oh, yep. I think
Yeah.
that we are about to wrap it up then. So
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, it
Yeah.
was a pleasure talking. This is not work. This is the greatest conversation I've had in a long time about
Thank
music
you.
and things.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to meet you, and
Wonderful to meet you
um,
too.
yeah, I wish you the very best on everything that you've got coming up,
Thank you.
and how we open back up. So I think Alyssa's gonna come on in. Yes.
Hello. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, that was the best. I think I just the frustrating hands of Zoom clapping. I wish we could have applause for this. I know I would, for one, would be on my feet. I want to thank you both for this really great conversation. I'm so psyched also that it's recorded so we can keep going back to it. There's so many things to mine for here, especially for, you know, composers coming up from whatever direction they're coming up, right? Whether it's through university system, conservatory system, or that lateral move from some other space in the music industry into composition. The things, some of the things that you mentioned there are really great. I love that we went from the no space to the possibility space. And Denise, I want to thank you for ending with that. You know, what are the spaces that we're watching that are, you know, as Alonso just said, getting on the train. Yeah, it's a train moves faster than a bus. So we're going to get on the train. Maybe we'll make it a plane. Maybe we'll make it a rocket. But
Yeah.
whatever we're going to do, we're going to push this along. And, you know, thanks to the folks like the two of you and the two of you yourselves, I really appreciate your insights and just this wonderful conversation. So